All right, welcome everybody, and I'm glad you could join us this morning for our November MicroConference. I am Wilma Hodges. I'm a member of the Apereo board, and I'm also the Sakai community coordinator or manager with one of the Apereo projects. I also work alongside with supporting Sakai, and I have a consulting business as well, doing open source support and other types of technical writing and educational technology support. So I'd like to welcome everybody here on behalf of Apereo, and I hope that you'll enjoy our topic today. Before we dive into that, I do want to remind you that if you haven't already signed up for our newsletter, I encourage you to do that. You can join Apereo Communications if you go to our website and scroll down to the bottom. You'll see a link there where you can join the communications link. And that will allow you to subscribe to our newsletter and get notices about events like today's webinar and other events that we have on the calendar. So you'll get to hear about all the great stuff happening in the Apereo world. I'd also like to thank our sponsors for today. JMA Consulting is our MicroConference sponsor. They provide CiviCRM, which is actually the topic of our panel today, for registration and that sort of thing for our webinars. Our platform sponsor is Big Blue Button. That's the conferencing tool that we're using today. And then, of course, I'd like to thank our Apereo community of open source advocates and community members who join together to make Apereo what it is. So thank you all. Today, we're going to be talking about managing community, open source and higher ed through CiviCRM and open source CRM. It's going to be a panel discussion about the CiviCRM capabilities for higher ed functions like student recruitment, including communications and campus visit registrations, decision on scholarships, bursaries and admissions, advancement and alumni relations, lifelong learning, student information systems, and student engagement. And as you probably experienced in registering for this session, you can also use it to register for events, which actually in the Sakai community, we use it for our annual virtual conference. We use CiviCRM for that registration as well. So just a quick plug from the Sakai project. So today's speakers are, our moderator today is Joe Murray. And we have three panelists: Deb Bryan, Executive Director of the Open Source Initiative; Deb Nicholson, Executive Director of the Python Software Foundation; and Jamie Tillman, CEO and co-founder of Prolydian. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe to manage today's session.
Sure. We're going to try and keep things fairly relaxed and informal. And what I've asked each of the panelists to do is to tell us a little bit about the organization that they head up and what its mission is, and how they're using CiviCRM to help advance that mission. And so I'm going to start in order on my screen. So Deb Bryant, do you want to talk a little bit about the open source initiative and how you've been using CiviCRM?
Thank you. So I'm with the Open Source Initiative. It's a 501c3 registered in the US with a global footprint for its mission. Its mission is to support the open source ecosystem through its role as the international standards bearer. We define what open source software is. We were established about 27 years ago and have been supporting as a neutral third party nonprofit that mission. We host this publicly available discussions around how we certify software as open source. So it allows individuals and organizations to build their technology roadmap with confidence on things that are really open source. More recently, the last several years, we've added a couple of important components that are adjacent to the open source definition. One is that we have added a policy to our program. So we have a policy team involved both in Europe and the US, as we've seen a rise in regulation around things like cybersecurity and AI that have consequence for the software industry. And then we've also started a process almost 2 years ago of helping define what open source AI means in a similar way, where we need to have shared language, whether that's in the way we do business or in the way policy and regulators are now discussing policy. So that's important. We've been using CiviCRM since 2012. And to give you an idea of our footprint for the use of Civi, we have 4,500 member records. We have actively about 25 sponsor records. We have 87 affiliate organizations that we work with as a coalition of like-minded groups. We have 15,000 newsletter subscribers, and we put out about 30 mailings annually. We use CiviCRM to track our sponsors, our memberships. We use that as a basis to run our elections. We send out our newsletters and mailings directly from CiviCRM because we have access to that database. And it also helps us identify the criteria for who's eligible to do the elections. And an important piece for us is that we are able to integrate it with our workflow. So one of our use cases is the Open Policy Alliance we created last summer in response to a need to work with other like-minded organizations to try to respond to requests for public information and policy development. We don't ask for legislation, but we want to be available to respond to it. So in CiviCRM, we have the records for that group. When we created it, we started by using the data from the affiliates program to be able to reach out to those 87 organizations and invite them to join the coalition. That includes, by the way, Python Foundation is one of the members of that coalition, as is Apereo Foundation, and they've really been amazing contributors. We then were able to put a form on the web and invite the general public and for nonprofit organizations to also join. So they were able to fill out a form, include the criteria that would help them qualify as a public benefit organization. And that information flowed into CiviCRM. We were able to approve or disapprove or give feedback, and then they became part of our data. Another use case we have, which I appreciate as a nonprofit, is that we know who everyone is that's ever touched OSI, whether they've been a member or a prior board representative. And when we do events in cities, we're a very, very small team, but we can reach out by zip code to members in other cities. So if we're doing an event in Los Angeles, we can send out a note to our members there and say, would you like to join us? Here's what we're doing. Would you like to volunteer for the booth? Can we give you a free pass? So it's been important both for maintaining relationships with really important stakeholders, as well as be able to execute on some of our operations. That's kind of a nutshell. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks very much, Deb. Moving to Deb Nicholson of the Python Software Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do as an organization and then how you're using Civi?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So the Python Software Foundation, as you might have guessed, supports, promotes, and protects the Python programming language. And that includes working with all the legal stuff that is underpins owning, all the trademarks and things like that. We also support a global community of Python users all over the world. And we work to support the technical advisory committee that makes decisions about the roadmap for Python, the programming language. We also run a massive event in the US. This year's will be in May in Long Beach each year. And so we use CiviCRM to support a lot of that work. We, like OSI, also run public elections to fill our board seats. And so we manage our membership program through CiviCRM. We recently got to go from 5 membership types to 4, which sounds like it would be easy and less mess, but was actually a little bit thorny on the details. And we did all of that in CiviCRM. And that's like kind of after moving. So we had this concept of like paid contributors who are members and then unpaid people who have committed time or sweat equity or whatever to the project. And that was all in a very old pile of spreadsheets. And so we moved all that into Civi. Now it's all in one place. When we run our elections, we have a list of people. Even more recently, we asked our board to say, like, hey, we have in our bylaws like a stipulation that you have to certify that you want to vote in advance. And then we said, hey, let's make that a little easier for people. If you vote every year, you don't have to stipulate that you plan to vote again next year. And that is all managed through CiviCRM. I can't even imagine how we would do that, which makes like our board election participation higher and feel better and is less verbose and less emails for people. But we're really only able to do that because CiviCRM makes it possible. So that's one massive thing. And then the other massive thing that we use CiviCRM for is our grants program. So when I mentioned that we support a global network of Pythonistas all over the world who are constantly running events, constantly doing teach-ins, workshops, all these different kind of things where they gather and they learn Python together. We have a grants program that we give out that supports that work. In order to make sure that we can both get what we need as a 501c3 charity for reporting purposes, but then also do the lightest load on community members, we have a form that community members fill out to apply for the grants. And that way we can keep track of like, oh, these are people who have applied for grants before. So maybe we don't have to go into like so many questions about like what the event's about, what's happening. And then these are new ones and we can kind of keep track of that. It also has enabled us to do a lot of, create a lot of metrics. So our community had a lot of questions about like, how do these grants get given out? Who's getting them? Where are they going? What's the impact? And all these types of things. And so because we have all of the like grant applications and recipients, like in one place, not in a lot of email threads, we were able to provide like a lot of transparency to our community on how the grants program is run. And I can share a link to the post that we did for the 2024 retrospective on the grants program. And you can see like, this is kind of what I'm talking about. But those are our two main ways. Like we do also use it to mail people. We send out a newsletter. I feel like everyone sort of expects like that level of thing, but those I think are the two that are really integral and sort of like make like our work to like able to be responsive to community needs in a particular way.
Thanks a lot, Deb. I think the application process that you have for your grants is fairly complex and might track some things that universities do. I'm going to move now to Jamie. We're going nice and quickly through this. So Jamie, can you tell us a little bit about the business that Prolydian has and who you're supporting and how you're using Civi?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Jamie Tillman. I'm the CEO and lead architect of Prolydian. Unlike everyone else, we are a for-profit software company, but we provide services to, if not primarily, probably almost exclusively nonprofits who are running professional credentialing programs, which are post-secondary programs that are basically providing credentials in their profession in order to increase the level of competence and professionality in their industries. These are groups that are very passionate about their work, and almost always they're volunteer-driven boards. So they're always cost-conscious and always struggling with turnover and institutional knowledge retention, things along those lines. So we ended up creating, back in 2014, Prolydian started up as our goal was to provide credential tracking, exam management, exam delivery, and continuing education tracking for these organizations. And our initial goal was to serve these groups in small to medium groups. We're starting to move now into larger organizations. And it's always been possible for us to provide services to higher ed, but we've never really broken into that particular market. We've basically been working with professional credentials. When we started up the the Prolydian system, we created a flagship product, and our customers started telling us what we really want, in addition to what you're providing us, is a way to manage our association memberships. We want to be able to allow folks to come in and become members, but sometimes in advance of becoming credentialed and becoming certified, sometimes after becoming certified. And we want these websites that we're creating to maintain its synchronization with your main product, which is tracking our credentials and our continuing education. So we had a large effort over the years creating these synchronization processes between our primary product, which is not CiviCRM oriented or based, and these other systems we were setting up for our customers. And at this point, I think we've probably served upwards of a couple dozen of associations and credentialing programs using CiviCRM and the Drupal content management system. We haven't done anything coordinated with WordPress at this point, but it's mainly been Drupal and CiviCRM. So that's since 2014. I can't really say how large some of our programs are, probably in the order of 10 to 20,000 memberships. And some of them have similar levels of certification. And so fairly decent size. And we give them the ability to do things like board management, doing surveys, tracking membership involvement in, sometimes they'll have training programs that their advanced members will provide to new members, to kind of create a system where they can help get them onboarded. So it's a variety of things that we've been doing over the years. And just over the last couple of years, we've started to team up with Joe Murray and JMA Consulting to kind of expand our offerings and services so that we can better serve our clients with that. Myself, my experience with CiviCRM and open source in general goes way back. In fact, I wanted to do a shout out to Deb Bryant and OSI because you guys are my heroes. I really started doing work with open source back in 1994 and continued that work up when I first got my first professional paying job, you might say, with the state of Florida. And so I really cut my teeth in governmental work. And that's why the OSI has been such an interesting group to watch over the years. That was back in '97. And I started working with Drupal and CiviCRM in around 2005. CiviCRM had just come out. And what was fascinating to me was the ability for groups that didn't have a large amount of money available and a large staff available to get access to something as powerful as CiviCRM. It's only gotten more powerful over the years, but even back then, it was providing a level of capability to groups that otherwise would have had to have done something on their own. They would have had to build it from scratch. And the combination of Drupal and CiviCRM has just been so compelling for me over the years that when Prolydian ran up against this problem of needing to provide these capabilities to our clients, and we didn't want to go build it from scratch, it immediately came to mind as an option, and we've never looked back.
I'm going to chime in a little bit about CiviCRM and what it works with. I don't want to take up too much time, but in addition to supporting integration with Drupal and Joomla since 2005, we've been supporting integration with WordPress since around 2010. And there's over 10,000 instances of CiviCRM, 10,000 nonprofits around the world using it. So I'm going to open things up to the audience. We've got a fair amount of time today, and I'm hoping that people will have questions. I'm happy to chime in with some of my own if things go slowly. So I see Michelle is popping in here. How did your team first approach learning what CiviCRM could do, and what helped you uncover the features that best aligned with your foundation's needs? So those are three questions. I'm going to start with the first one. Actually, maybe I'll do all three and then go across the three panelists. Do you have internal technical staff who manage and customize Civi, or do you rely on external consultants and hosting partners? And then what advice would you give to smaller orgs trying to find the right balance between in-house and outsourcing? So 3 questions there. And I'm going to maybe go with the same order for this set. Deb Bryant, then Deb Nicholson, then Jamie.
Thank you. Finding the mute button. So we're going to answer the first question. How did we first approach? I wasn't there when we found it, but I was on the board when CiviCRM was being evaluated. And I think the way we uncovered the features that the foundation needed was by asking if it could be done. And that became an important partnership for us because we have a very small team. We have worked with an outside consultant for many years. We have people on our staff that are technical enough that they're undaunted by sometimes challenging ways to work with the interface. For customization, we go for outside help. But internally, we've done a good job of documenting how to operate CiviCRM for our needs. And then when we have something extraordinary, like the use case I had where we wanted to have an intake process that would put things right into our workflow, that kind of work really helps to have an outside consultant, especially if you don't want to break anything you already have working. So finding the right balance means make sure you have at least one person on your staff who's enthusiastic about understanding the system and how much they can do themselves. But bring someone in from the outside if you want to do some additional architecture or some custom use cases. That's how we kind of take apart from it. I will find it from a user point of view. I'm not a technical person, and I'm not afraid of learning new technology, but I have said terrible things about CiviCRM under my breath from time to time because it's not super intuitive. It is not the most intuitive thing you'll ever find, but the trade-off is it's remarkably powerful, it's remarkably flexible, and it's remarkably free of a license fee. So whatever you'll spend in getting outside help, you will more than save from licensing a very expensive platform. And it really is built with nonprofits in mind, with higher ed and nonprofits being great customers. Anyway, that's been our experience.
And you've answered the first 2 questions. I'm just going to prompt you on the third one. What advice would you give to smaller orgs trying to find the right balance? I guess you've kind of touched on that as well.
I think so. I guess I would just further than that say that you'll want to consult with the staff you have on board to see if there's something they're willing to take on. I mean, you don't necessarily need to go out and hire a new person, but make sure you have at least one person that's very comfortable with learning a new tool. Who can help be the inside resource, the inside advocate, and also do your internal documentation on how you're using the system. That would be my encouragement.
I'm just going to pop into the channel a link to a list of experts. There's about 5 or 6 dozen consulting firms that support Civi around the world. And so if you're looking for some outside help, there's lots available. And people specialize in different areas, and some are worldwide as well. So I'm going to move on then to Deb. Do you want to answer those same 3 questions?
Yeah, so I've only been at the PSF for 3.5 years, and we had already chosen CiviCRM actually not that long before I arrived. So I got to learn along with everyone. I know key for us was that Civi is open source and it aligns with our mission, and that whatever unholy thing we had before was undocumented and terrible. So, documented, even terrible is better than undocumented and terrible, and it is not terrible. As Deb said, it's pretty powerful. We do have internal technical staff, but they do not normally get into customizing CiviCRM for us. So we have people that are willing to do like kind of day-to-day stuff, like updating records, pulling lists and things like that, but not necessarily like if we want to migrate a whole big group into the system or change the way a form works, then we go for outside consultants. I would say to smaller orgs trying to find the right balance between in-house capacity and outsourcing is unless you have someone who's really a Civi expert, I would work with an outside consultant to get you to a place where your staff can do the things that you need done on a daily basis. And I think you actually, like, Civi is opinionated, or is powerful, but it's not necessarily opinionated. And so it gives you a lot of options to do a lot of different things. And I think it behooves you as an organization to be a little bit opinionated about how you use it. Like, one of the things in particular that I've noticed is not at PSF, but if you have a longer running Civi database, there's tags and there's groups, and they often overlap. And I think as an org, you have to decide what you use groups for and what you use tags for. And then anyone who touches your database, whether it's a board member, a volunteer, staff person, new consultant, you explain to them, this is what we use tags for, and this is what we use groups for. And that's going to save you some time down the road. Like, so it is powerful. You can do anything you want with it. Sort of like Python itself, actually. But be a little opinionated in-house, especially if your team is small and you expect to have your database running for many years with new rotating members of your small team using it every couple of years. Yeah, so be opinionated and let experts set up the big stuff for you.
I'm going to chime in a little bit before moving to Jamie. CiviCRM has plugins that work with WordPress, plugins that work with Joomla, and modules that work with Drupal, as well as over 1,000, actually a few thousand native extensions. And so trying to become aware of all the options for customizing it is a challenge when you're just getting started. I'm going to put in the chat a link to a low-cost getting started service that's provided by CiviCRM LLC. And you can use that, and then if you decide to move on to something that's a little more attuned to your special needs, then you can move to one of the partners that I had listed earlier, the experts. And I would also say these systems can stay in your organization for 5 to 10 or more years. And so just to pick up on Deb Nicholson's point, you want to kind of decide what you want to do with it, and then keep training your staff as staff turn over, and use it in a consistent way. Jamie?
Thanks, Joe. Yes, I can echo what Deb Bryan and Deb Nicholson said. I think for us, probably just to answer the first question, how our team first approached CiviCRM, I sort of alluded to it when I was talking earlier. We came across a need in our company to provide some services to clients that things we hadn't already prepared, and we wanted to get there faster. And I just happened to have a significant amount of experience using CiviCRM and Drupal already. So I was pretty much the advocate that Deb Bryant was talking about, where someone was willing to get in, get their hands dirty and to learn how to set everything up, because I had kind of already done that over the years. So it was sort of an easy transition for us. But you are going to want someone like that, not necessarily someone who gets down to the technical details, but someone who's willing to get their hands dirty with the system and learn how to use it well, and learn the concepts, because the concepts can be a little bit different than people are used to as well. I know most AMS, association management systems, and CRMs, they do have similar concepts these days that kind of cross over, but Civi does have a few things that are slightly different, and I think they're worth coming to grips with before you get too deep into it. As for us, I've lived on both sides of this divide between the non-technical super users and the technical users. I've headed up nonprofits and I've served nonprofits, and I'm currently sort of in between this people who are serving our nonprofit customers, because we have some contractors now who are doing a lot of the work. So I've been in all, I guess now 3 different areas of this, and they all present their own challenges. But I will say that anyone that you contract with is going to greatly benefit from having a key contact in your organization who they're able to communicate with and who can speak Civi, even if they don't, code Civi. So that's an important thing for someone to get familiar with. As far as advice, I think Deb Bryant's advice was spot on, and Deb Nicholson's advice was a good follow-up. You can have someone in your group who is technical. You can have an entire in-house technical staff that's working on CiviCRM. But what you really want to be concerned about, at least above and beyond what was already mentioned, for me was institutional knowledge retention. Because you can have someone come in who is a reasonably decent web developer and who got to know Drupal and Civi like me. But a lot of situations can be where those people leave. And now you have a system that's not being maintained and no one who knows how it's run. And it turns into the undocumented beast, whereas previously it might not have been. So you want to consider the continuity. And having one enthusiastic person is very good, but you need to have a team that's going to help take you forward beyond just that current person's tenure. And that's where having a staff in-house or a staff of contract resources is going to really be key. You want someone who if you contract with someone, you want someone, as Joe was mentioning, that list. Those are groups that have a long-standing relationship with Civi and a reputation for sticking around. You can hire someone off of it's the gig economy. You can hire a programmer, but will they stick around? It's difficult to know. So make sure that you team up with someone who's going to have who's reputable for longevity and hanging in there for the long haul.
I'm going to talk a little bit about training, and then pass another question on to the panelists about SearchKit. So there is a service available with a lot of kind of task-based short videos for how to use Civi to accomplish a certain end. And then periodically there are 2-day administrator and user trainings for CiviCRM. And these are for people who are using it all the time or become power users. They're usually associated with a conference. And so we tend to have, as a community, one event in North America, a big one, and usually a few in Europe. So we had one in California in about May and June, and we're likely to have one in Toronto. Actually, it's going to be our year to do it. We did it 14 years ago. Anyway, so next May there will be one in Toronto, and there was just one in the Netherlands, and there's probably others that you can find out about by going on to CiviCRM and getting the newsletter. I would say that CiviCRM has, over the past number of years, developed a low-code, no-code approach to developing new functionality called SearchKit and Form Builder. It is for technically minded people. SearchKit is more like an ad hoc query builder, and Form Builder is quite powerful but very complex. So it's not for an ordinary staff person who's just a casual user of CiviCRM. And so those are areas where it might benefit if you want to bring your expertise in-house and lower your external consulting costs to send someone to a training. I'm just going to try and go up here. So there was a question about SearchKit and Form Builder. I'm wondering if anyone on the panel wants to speak to that.
I think I dropped a comment in the column. When we were getting ready to do the session, I mentioned to our internal expert, Nick Vidal, that I might need a couple of slides. He gave me about 20 and said, please be sure and mention SearchKit. We're not doing slides. But he's very enthusiastic, and it's been a great way, having done the careful work Deb has described, where we spent a lot of time thinking about groups, thinking about tags, and did early investment in identifying what all the data is or going in and what its characteristics are. The search kit function is a very powerful way to be able to, without creating yet another consolidated or aggregated database, be able to do ad hoc reports, management reports, however you want to describe it. So if I want to know who in our database was ever on the board of directors and paid for a membership for at least 5 years and lives in the lower quadrant of some continent, I can go ask that and do a query and find out exactly what I'm looking for. So it's been a particularly powerful, easy thing to do. Not that I can't speak to forms, which I think Joe mentioned is more of a, or Sunny J mentions a more challenging tool. But the search, definitely worth investing time. I learned how to use SearchKit just watching someone. And again, if you invest in time in making sure you have your data identified the way you want to use it later, it's a very powerful tool.
Thanks, Deb. Anyone else want to speak to SearchKit and or Form Builder?
I was just going to say that the forms for us really kind of unified a lot of our financial information so that we were able to kind of easily do checks and balances against our QuickBooks stuff. So it doesn't talk to it directly, but now that we have everything in one place and not 17 places, it's really easy to be okay, are we missing anything? We're not missing anything, or we're missing this one thing, and we can go find it. And just having everything go into one place and having the flexibility on the forms. So for our grants program, we have a couple different kinds of grants that go into the same place, but they all have a financial impact. So they all read on our financials and help keep us super organized in that way. And there's nothing that doesn't go in through the form. And having if the form was rigid or not changeable, it would be really difficult. But because we're able to use a similar form for a couple different things, it means that it all feeds into our financial results, which like I said, gives us the opportunity to also share stuff from there to increase transparency with our community.
Jamie, do you have any?
Yeah, it's interesting. As long as I've been working with CiviCRM and Drupal, I really didn't get familiarized with SearchKit until about a couple years ago. I'm not exactly sure how long it was in incubation, but it sort of hit me by surprise, because prior to SearchKit, it was extremely difficult to create new reports. You essentially had to be a developer, and you had to have pretty heavy experience with the Civi framework in order to even create custom reports. We did it, but it was never fun. And now SearchKit has opened up just an enormous array of opportunities for us to create reports much more quickly. We can create in 20 minutes what used to take a couple of hours. And so it's definitely exciting. And the form builder as well, that's something that I've had a little bit less experience setting up. One of the challenges with Civi is that, as Deb Bryant pointed out, they integrate with WordPress. CiviCRM has this interesting hybrid effect where you don't use CiviCRM directly. You install it with something else, either WordPress or Drupal typically. I know Joomla has traditionally been one. I've never really been involved in a Joomla installation, but WordPress and Drupal are really where my experience lies. And you're essentially, apart from a very brief period during which CiviCRM was available as a standalone, nowadays you have to have one or the other. And when you do that, you're sort of inheriting an entirely other learning process for the CMS that you're having to glom onto. And that becomes a challenge as well. Drupal is the more complex choice of the two, but it's similar to how Joe pointed out that CiviCRM provides a very powerful platform. Drupal provides a very powerful platform for content management. So you do gain something, but it doubles the learning curve in some ways because you're having to learn both of them. So, for example, there are some plugins that, as Joe alluded to, that you can install in Drupal that will interact with CiviCRM and allow you to build forms. There's a web forms plugin for Drupal that we use pretty extensively. And so we haven't really gotten into the form builder quite as much. because we had been for years leveraging that capability. And now we have to come and learn this other module that probably will provide us with even better user experience, but we just haven't gotten there.
I think Jamie was right that at one point there was a standalone version of CiviCRM a number of years ago, and then that dropped support. However, the community has become quite interested in this, and starting in 2025, the beginning of this year, there's a new, better supported version of standalone. And the reason is that the market share of Joomla and Drupal has been dropping. WordPress continues around 43% of the web, but we're finding that some automated proprietary technologies like Squarespace and Wix are starting to be used by nonprofits that are budget conscious. And so the new standalone will integrate with these other ones using standard technologies like OEmbed and iframe. And so, and it's also, we're moving to adopt Kubernetes also as a hosting platform. So we're publishing standalone as a container image that can run on that. So there are continuing developments in the ecosystem to support other types of platforms like Wix and Squarespace.
That's exciting.
Thanks. I'm just wanting to encourage anyone who has a question they'd like, or an area they'd like discussed, to pop a question into the public chat. Jay, I'm wondering if we've addressed your various helpful questions. I know Andy at AGH Strategies is a good hosting provider. Deb Bryant, did you want to speak?
I have a question for my colleagues, and in part it's inspired by a couple of comments and questions by the audience around giving login permissions, creating access, strategy for people to be able to use something else besides having to log in to touch the contact. So how are we managing access? As an example, OSI used to give access to anyone on the board that joined, and we had volunteers sweeping in, and then we've come to the point now where there are people we don't recognize their names anymore. So what are our best practices for making sure that we have a good, reliable database that people can contribute to, but also make sure someone doesn't accidentally screw something up for everybody? What do you think, Deb?
Deb Nicholson?
I do have some thoughts. I do think that, and you should do this not just for your Civi, but really for anything where you have access, is you should do an annual or semi-annual review of everyone who has access. So whether that's the blog or the database or whatever it is, like, you should just be doing it every year. And if you have like a high volume of people, or like maybe you have like an event during the year where you add a lot of people, then you do a little cleanup at the end of the event or something like that. So it's not, you're never sitting where you're like, I don't even know who this is, but they have super user access, because that's not a good place to be. It means that the cleanup that should have been done at some point in the past never got done. So the person that gave that person access and knows why they even had access is gone. So you don't really want to be in that situation. So I would, and that's like very much the social thing there. Maybe someone else can speak to like a more technical solution to that, but really you should be looking periodically and cleaning out your access. People can always be added back, but you can't undo like, whoops, like that person, I don't know, had a supervillain arc and has had access for 10 years and now they're back. Like, that's way, way harder to undo than, oh, hey, you accidentally cut me out. Can you put me back on?
Jamie, do you want to maybe speak about roles-based access control with Civi and its integration with the CMSs?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, it's an interesting thing because the CMSs typically have their access controls, and then Civi has its access controls. And I've done less granular work with WordPress than I have with Drupal in regards to access control. But even WordPress has the ability to create limitations and capabilities on the website across different features, different plugins, things like that. Drupal, of course, has the same sort of thing. And when you marry CiviCRM to one of these CMSs, you have the ability, of course, for someone to log into the CMS as a user with the CMS, and then there's a map that links it over to CiviCRM, and then you can create roles in CiviCRM that give access to CiviCRM functions. So it can get very complicated, and I think Deb Nicholson's advice was spot on. You definitely want to be reviewing this stuff over time, but I think also at the outset, it's really important for you to look at who's doing things, who wants to do things, who do you want doing things in your system, and map out the capabilities that you want them to be able to do. Like, do you want certain people to be able to modify payment information on profiles in Civi? Do you want them to be able to create events? Do you want them to be able to add and remove participants from those events? So there's going to be a variety of functions that your people and that your staff are going to be wanting to do, and you need to map those out. And then you'll want to take those and map them onto roles in CiviCRM that then you'll need to make possible to link to your CMS so that you can give users that access. So in the end, it's going to be a matter of taking what you're doing institutionally and mapping it onto what CiviCRM allows you to set up in terms of access control for different things you can do in the system. And then you'll create a role for each of the staff roles that you've sort of split out, and you'll be able to give people that access. Granted, there are, I know Joe's run into this plenty of times, there's going to be situations where you want someone to be able to do a particular granular thing, and yet the system's not coded to allow that small granular thing to be done without giving access to something else. Maybe the UI doesn't give you the right visibility, even though you have the capability. So there can be challenges that a contractor or internal technical staff can help you work through. But it can be a challenge sometimes if you really want to get picky about the levels of access people have.
I'm just going to mention that there are statistics for the users of CiviCRM with different numbers of contacts in the database, and I'm trying to log in because that's available to partners. And so maybe if I can have someone else answer a question, I'll try and do that and then share the screen. Just on the topic of rules-based access control, there are more sophisticated, complicated, complex, advanced features. And so you can, for example, set it up so that only certain roles are allowed to see certain groups of contacts, or certain roles are allowed to see certain fields, or for the purposes of organizations doing fundraising, you can also say that only certain roles are allowed to see anything to do with money, or particularly a certain financial type. So that last one came about because people who are making bequests might not want the whole world to know about that. And so there was a need to lock down people who were making large donations. So let me just try to, some of these I'm not sure that the panelists are going to be that familiar with it. Does anyone on the panel want to speak about AI? Because I'm familiar with this. I'm going to go ahead then. There are a few different organizations who are looking to put together MCP agentic approaches to using generative AI as a front end for Civi. And we're at JMA particularly interested in using it to help with accessing SearchKit. I'm going to be talking with one of our larger clients on Monday about funding some of that. And at a recent sprint, which we do in an open source way around our events in the Netherlands, some German folks put together, I would call it a beta for doing that. and AGH and Moodle. So there is an existing Moodle integration, and JMA has been supporting it for a number of years. And it started out with Drupal, but I think it also works with WordPress. And let's see.
Yeah, for me, Joe, I think the most important thing when you're trying to link up agentic AI with a system like this is that you have a good interface for the agentic AI to actually access the system. And one of the most impressive things about Civi is its REST API support, as well as there's the command line, the CV command line tool. I would imagine, I haven't done any of this with linking up AI to Civi, but I would imagine you guys have a pretty good leg up on that, having done all of the heavy lifting, getting the REST API going, so, as well as you have.
That's true. And the 1,000 native extensions, many of them are integrating with external APIs and REST interfaces. I'm just going to try and bring up those stats. Sorry for this.
While you're doing that, Joe,
Go ahead,
I'll
James.
mention that I think your effort on the search kit side to link up AI is actually a very fertile area. One of our service providers for our company is Stripe.com, and they have a special data warehouse querying tool, and they've linked up AI to that, and it helps you build the queries that you're running against your financial data. And these AI agents can get very helpful when they learn all of the various tables and linkages that are made between the data. You give them essentially a description of what you want, and they'll build the query and get you usually 80 to 90% of the way there. Sometimes it's not exactly right. I would imagine that with SearchKit, we'd be able to go even a step further, because SearchKit isn't, of course, building the query. It's building the objects. And so I think being able to tell SearchKit in an AI window what you would like to see in a SearchKit query, that it could build the objects for you, and it would be super powerful.
So I'm just going to, thanks for that, Jamie. I'm just going to quickly hover over some of these different colors. So there's a large number of tiny installs. I think this might have some of the test databases. And then you've got 1,000 between 250 and 1,000 contacts, another 1,000 between 1,000 and 2,500, and then another 2,000 between 2,500 and 10,000, and then about 1,000 going up to 25K. So you can see that it's oriented towards smaller installs, and then this is going up to 100,000. So you've got another 1,000, and then there are some large ones. We've got, for example, a political party, and I know the Wikimedia Foundation has quite a large number. We provide support to the New York State Senate, which has every resident in New York in a large number of them. So it is used by a number of smaller organizations as a sweet spot in the market. A number of years ago, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, the Nonprofit Technology Network did a CRM evaluation, and they brought it under 1 million annual budget, 1 million to 3 million annual budget, and over 3 million annual budget. And Civi was the preferred one for the bottom two, and the second most in the third one. What kind of an org or project would benefit from a Spark instance? I would say that Spark is a good way to get started, and I wouldn't bother with self-hosting unless you have a lot of internal expertise on hosting, and it's not going to be good if you have a lot of custom needs. It provides a core set of extensions, but if you wanted to do different customizations that require some of these other extensions, then you wouldn't be able to do that using Spark. have maybe time for one last one here from Michelle. If multiple projects within one foundation use Civi, how can they collaborate to share knowledge, templates, or configuration? So then there's governance and coordination problems. I'm going to say that you can share one back-end instance of CiviCRM with different front-end content management systems. It's a little unusual, but any of the top-end partners could do that for you. You would want to probably collaborate on your governance and how you're going to use things like tags and groups and so on. What else do I want to say there?
I wouldn't want to undersell CiviCRM's multi-site capability either. I know it's got that ability also.
And so the multi-site is especially good if you have a chapter-based organization, like maybe state chapters or country chapters or local chapters of some sort. And then you can make it so that some of the administrators of your chapters, you can lock it down so they're only able to see and modify their own contacts. And national or top-level organization staff can see everyone. And so that's well-developed and long-standing functionality. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time today. I hope you found this interesting and helpful. If you want to follow up, I'm not sure if maybe you can send something to Apereo, and I'll just put my email in the chat as well. I would suggest going to some of the links earlier for CiviCRM.org, where you can learn a lot and find a lot of resources, as well as all the partners there.
All right, great.
Any
well, thank
final
you so
words?
Much. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Does anybody have any final thoughts?
I just thank you, Apereo, for putting on the micro series. I appreciate the opportunity to share our experience.
Yeah, thanks for hosting and thanks for having us.
All right, great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Appreciate
so much for sharing your knowledge and experience about CiviCRM, and it's exciting to see all the different things that it's capable of. I know in my own use of it, I've only scratched the surface, so it was very interesting to hear about how you're using it in a more in-depth fashion to support all facets of membership. So thanks again for sharing that information with us. And as Joe mentioned, you can reach out to Apereo if you have questions, and we can put you in touch with them, or you can reach out to him directly at the email address there in the chat. This session will be recorded, so it'll be available on our Apereo's YouTube channel if you want to send it to your friends who couldn't make it today, or reference it later. So if you need to go back to any of the topics discussed, you can always review the video later on. So thank you again so much for joining us today, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Deb, and Jamie, and Wilma. Bye, everyone.